Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Insights for Innovation webinar, Uncovering Insights in the New Normal, Virtual Research Techniques for Successful Innovation. My name is Rachel Yaden, and I'll be your co-host today for today's webinar. I'm a project manager at Applied Marketing Science. Our presenter today is Kristyn Corrigan, Principal and Leader of Insights for Innovation Practice at Applied Marketing Science. In her over 12 years of consulting experience, she has helped dozens of companies use customer insights to create more successful products, services, and customer experiences. Today, we're excited to discuss emerging methods for uncovering needs in the pandemic world, as well as the impact that connectivity, mobile ethnography, and artificial intelligence have on customer needs. We'll be answering your questions at the end of the webinar, but we encourage you to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A or chat box on the side of your screen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kristyn.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for joining us in today's webinar, Uncovering Insights in the New Normal, Virtual Research Successful Innovation, where I'll talk about why understanding the changing priority of customer needs matters more today than ever. So today's webinar will last about 30 minutes and it has three main parts. First, I'll talk about the value of fresh customer insights, especially in today's pandemic environment and the eventual post-pandemic environment. And next, I'll go in depth on some traditional and emerging virtual methods that can help brands get at these valuable insights with a particular focus on what you can do to understand customers when it's difficult to be face-to-face. While I go through the methods, I have a case study to go along with each, so 3 in total, all examples of research conducted in the past year where sites were paramount, and being in person and utilizing these more traditional research methods was just impossible. And of course, as Rachel said, we'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A, which you can just place in the chat as you have questions. Okay, so let's start off by talking about the value of what I'm calling fresh insights. That organizations are under more pressure than ever to innovate, and the stakes have changed, frankly. In a recent study fielded by McKinsey & Company, they found that over 77% of Americans are trying new shopping behaviors during the pandemic. And this creates an opportunity. Outdated research just doesn't cut it because it doesn't reflect new realities, preferences, and shifts in priorities due to what COVID-19 has dealt all of us. So innovation is no longer just about growing the box, expanding your brand. For many, it's about survival. By way of example, let's look at the restaurant industry. When they were forced to shut their doors last March, they had to assess customer needs with what was possible given the current reality. Many restaurants pivoted to expand outdoor dining areas, developed contactless ordering and pickup processes, and even moved to selling farm-to-table foods to be prepared at home. So these organizations had to rely on a deep understanding of their patrons and shift in their need priority given what was going on. Despite the fact that a lot of companies can conceptualize that customer insights are vital to growth, success, and now survival, many organizations lack a deep understanding of their customers' needs. And it's really impossible to know if you're in a service in a way that addresses the most met needs in the marketplace. So many companies that I talk to, they say that they don't have the time or the budget to sink into a fully fleshed out market research effort. And while it's true that traditional methods may still require a bit of time and some investment, depending on how much you outsource, some of these emerging techniques can help you get there as well. So let's talk about some of the benefits of these emerging virtual techniques. What have we learned over 2020? Well, Almost all research can be done virtually. So we have traditional qualitative interviews, which I know I do a lot of. Those can be done over the phone or over video. But even prototype tests, which I'll talk about later in the webinar, we've adapted those so they can actually be done virtually when you mail the product to customers or to patients. Quantitative surveys, though this was the case before the pandemic, but customers are used to taking these online or over the phone. And then lastly, we have this idea of mobile ethnography, which we've been doing more and more of. Very cool, very innovative way of getting insights, where we have customers shop, keep diaries, document usage, often through the use of apps on their smartphones. We've also learned through 2020 that customers are more comfortable or increasingly comfortable with virtual methodologies. So virtual technology too has had to get better because everyone has demanded it to work from home. Customers are generally more willing, I've found, to be on video because they're used to it because of new work or schooling or social norms. And also, some have a bit more flexibility in their schedules. Many are working from home, so they're able to fit in research, interviews, and surveys in times where they otherwise would have been commuting. Virtual research, generally speaking, is faster and more economical than your traditional methods. You're not having to travel to customers. You're not dealing with third parties to coordinate your focus groups and your visits. It's just a bit more streamlined. And lastly, what we've learned through 2020 is that customer opinions are changing. They're changing across virtually every industry, and they want to let you know. So we know that even from our own experiences, routines have changed, right? So we have work from home, we have remote learning, we have different ways of socializing and shopping, and customers clearly have opinions about all of these things. And we know from our research that customers are leaving an increasing number of opinions on social media, in forums, and reviews out there. So what I want to do next is take a look at 3 methods for collecting virtual customer insights. First, we have virtual ethnography, which you see here on the screen. Next, I'll talk about virtual in-depth interviews, and then we'll wrap up by talking about machine learning or artificial intelligence. So for virtual ethnography, let's see, ethnography, just to ground everyone, research, really great way to understand your customers' latent, unspoken, or infrequently mentioned needs. So when most of us think of ethnography, the first thing that probably comes to mind is the more traditional method of visiting customers at their home or at their place of work or at the store and observing them. And you're probably thinking that ethnography is something that just isn't possible right now. And you're right to some extent that due to the realities of COVID, in most cases, in-person observation just isn't possible. What a lot of companies and what we at AMS have turned to instead is mobile ethnography. So in this case, the respondent is conducting or collecting the ethnographic information on their own. And it's typically done through the use of mobile technology. It's often a customer's cell phone. Customers will take photographs or videos that tell a story, and these could be in daily life, product usage, or even their buying process. And the advantage here is that this method allows respondents to capture data on their own terms over the course of several days or weeks sometimes without introducing that potential bias of a researcher. So watching customers use your product or interact with your store or your brand gives you a better understanding of their problems, of their pain points, and their workarounds. It also allows you to uncover things that might not be a traditional research interview. For example, during some of the ethnographic work that we do, we'll often notice customers using products differently than intended. And by probing to understand why, we can have a richer understanding of customers' less obvious needs And the insights and nuance that you get from utilizing a process like this can really help you to develop that deep sense of customer empathy and start to see the world through your customer's eyes. So let's take a look at a quick case example here in virtual ethnography. The client here was New England Dairy. And through this research, they sought to explore the needs and trends of dairy consumption associated with their three key segments of interest. And then for this study, they wanted to examine teenagers, pediatricians, and school nutrition directors. And specifically, they were looking to understand the impact of COVID-19 on dairy and milk consumption and the why behind the trends and behaviors that they hypothesized. So what did we do? We at AMS facilitated 3 separate discussion boards, one for each segment of interest, that each lasted 3 days. Each board had 6 or 7 respondents that answered questions and follow-up probes created by AMS moderators. And as part of these sessions, we used virtual ethnographic techniques to have respondents tell about their dairy purchases, their consumptions, their recommendations, and how they were thinking about and consuming dairy. And the ethnographic component allowed us to empathize more deeply with the key segments of interest. So what did we learn? For the teen market, we learned that most teens do enjoy dairy, and while they do, they don't enjoy drinking plain dairy milk unless it's flavored or served with a sweet, such as cookies or cereal. Many teens have increased their consumption of dairy over COVID because they're at home, they're snacking more, and just eating more at home generally because of their hybrid learning model. So the consumption's increasing. We also probe to understand that teens, of course, spend a lot of time on social media, but they're not necessarily seeing much about dairy on social media from influencers that they may follow. And lastly, for teens, we had some interesting insights around milk packaging innovation. So they talked a lot about portability being important, fashionability, freshness, and they showed us pictures and examples as part of the ethnography to really showcase this. So some pretty interesting nuggets there. For the pediatricians, so very different audience here, we gained a deeper understanding of how they're providing patients with nutritional guidance and their attitudes towards dairy milk. We uncovered that they actually don't recommend non-dairy alternatives unless necessary because these alternatives just don't have the comparable nutrients as dairy milk or cow milk does. And lastly, in terms of co-pediatricians, we spoke with just this idea of patient and pediatric weight gain during the pandemic, but they still, in this case, weren't limiting dairy because they'd prefer to first encourage kids to get more physical activity rather than limiting dairy because of its nutrients. And lastly, school nutrition directors, lots of challenges there. They agree that dairy is a vital part of their meal programs, and they also exceptions we heard from the teen audience. And particularly as it relates to COVID, they talked about the challenge of less lunches being served in schools. Many instances, these lunches are going home with students, so this idea of freshness and keeping milk cold and having it be portable is very important. So all of these rich and informative insights that I just covered at a high level came from discussion boards with a virtual ethnographic component. And conducting the boards over time allowed our respondents to have some soak time, to provide thoughtful answers over the course of 3 full days. We were able to give respondent exercises and also collect photos and video clips, which really contributed to our story and helped bring our results to life. Let's talk about virtual in-depth interviews. Now, one of the best tried and true ways to understand customer needs. I've given webinars about this very topic before. I know that the one-on-one interview isn't something that's necessarily new in the research world, but conducting these interviews exclusively virtually and at times needing customers to react to a physical prototype is new and is complex. So let's talk a bit more about this type of research. We know that IDIs, or virtual in-depth interviews, are qualitative. They're virtual, they're one-on-one discussions. They're great when you want to investigate the why and the how, as opposed to looking to count how many. They're a great way to understand customer issues, experiences, explore nuances, or get a reaction to a product concept or prototype. What we want to do here is virtually still have that rich and detailed conversation over a set of topics and hear customer thoughts and experiences in their own words. The most important aspect of one-on-one interviewing, virtual or in person, is probing or asking why. Even when you think you know the answer, ask people. The answer oftentimes will surprise you. So we want to have customers explain these generalities. If they say something is good or something is bad, we don't want to just accept that and stop there. We need to understand why it is. So these in-depth interviews, they can be done over video chat, which is particularly useful if you're looking to get feedback on a prototype, or even just a telephone. What we've found over the course of 2020 and into 2021 is that remote interviews can actually help you to reach more customers in a shorter period of time, especially in business-to-business and healthcare markets. It's just much easier for some professionals or even physicians to give an hour over the phone rather than coming to meet you in person. So let's take a look at another case study. This is also from a 2020 AMS client. In this case, we're looking at medical device disposables. So what we did here is last year we worked with a major manufacturer of medical devices to do some prototype testing on disposables for a widely used device in their portfolio. In this case, the company had developed a prototype that it wanted to test with customers to inform further development and marketing and positioning of the newly proposed product. And key questions included, what are customer opinions on the proposed prototypes? What do they like, dislike? What are the key benefits? Why do customers think these are key benefits? And what questions, concerns, or clarifications do customers have? Do the proposed enhancements to the prototype appeal to customers? Why or why not? How do the prototypes perform during some preliminary usage tests? What works well? What issues do customers have? And do we see any differences by segment, right? Which in this case included patients and professionals or caregivers. And what implications does this have for marketing and for product development? So to accomplish this, we conducted 20 in-depth interviews via web conference. We mail various prototypes to respondents and use these prototypes during our discussion. Lots of logistics there. We asked respondents to complete certain tasks with the prototypes and to talk to us as they were completing those tasks. And through this research, we were able to recommend the prototype that our client should proceed with. We had several changes to implement before development started at a larger scale. And we also had some specific feedback about marketing, communications, and positioning that would need to happen for the prototype to be believable and accepted by the market and accepted by both the patient and professional segment. So really good example there of using a one-on-one interview virtually with a prototype. The last technique I'd like to cover today before we get to Q&A is machine learning. Mining existing content through tools like AMS's machine learning algorithm is a really great choice when budgets are limited, time is limited, and it may be difficult to get in person with customers. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that customers are talking more than ever, and it's true. We've seen an increase in online travel and talk since the beginning of the pandemic. In product reviews and forums, on social media, even with customer service chat data. If we think about the airlines, and the travel that folks were supposed to do, there's a lot of phone calls, for example, within that industry that have been mined for some key insights. So we know that customers want to share their experiences and opinions, and it's no surprise that companies, are overwhelmed with how to listen to and interpret all of this information that exists. So machine learning is something that makes it possible to understand all of the rich qualitative insights that we can get from this mountain of existing data. AMS's algorithm, which we developed in conjunction with researchers at MIT back in 2017, identifies a comprehensive set of insights and massive volumes of text data so that you're sure that you're not missing anything. So here's how this technique works. First, you want to identify the content to mine, in other words, the reviews or forums or social media or internal data sources you might have. Next, you extract the content from the various sources. Next, you train the machine to identify informative and uninformative insights. And next, you run the machine or algorithm. And as a last step, humans synthesize the insights from the machine to create a cohesive set of customer needs and really to understand and formulate the research story. What I like best about a process like this is that it combines the best of what humans and machines do. Humans select sources and train the algorithm. The algorithm does the heavy lifting and shifts through the mountains of data. And on the back end, the research team can analyze the insights produced and develop a report and action plan. So this type of technique can be used by both B2B and B2C and healthcare companies to gather a complete database of customer insights or patient insights in only a few weeks. Successful machine learning research projects have been completed in a number of categories, everything from small kitchen appliances to skin and hair care products. We've researched prepared foods, oral care, drug device combination products, even snowplows, so it really varies. Let's look at one last case study from a 2020 client. In this case, it's an intimate apparel company who was looking to innovate during the pandemic when traditional brick and mortar sales channels just really weren't an option. So PVH, the brand or the company that owns such brands as Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, Warner's, Olga, was looking to uncover insights related to bras and bra purchasing. Since so much of commerce in general has moved online, they wanted to understand challenges and needs related to online shopping for bras. So what we did, we utilized machine learning technology to identify a complete list of customer needs related to bra purchasing. We completed and compiled a data set of over 20,000 sentences from online forums, review sites, retail sites. We trained the machine to identify informative content, and within seconds, the machine identified about 2,000 sentences as most representative of that complete original data set of 20,000. So that is, the machine really acted as a sophisticated data reduction tool. We unearthed 135 unique customer needs related to purchasing bras. The needs pertain to 7 categories, including arrival and packaging, quality and durability, comfort and wear, shopping experience, post-shopping experience, style and look, fit, measure, and sizing. The team also analyzed comments about specific brands in order to isolate the perceived strengths and weaknesses of each. 2 significant findings I'd like to share with you. First, we discovered the importance of appeal of including extras like a wash bag, something competitors were doing, but our client was not. And second, we learned about some nuanced insights related to color. In this instance, only the darker tone bras were named after food and not the lighter tone bras. And this was perceived as offensive. customers felt that either all colors should be named after foods or none, and that things should be consistent. So let's wrap up here. I think, we can all agree on the importance of keeping a pulse on changing customer needs, especially in today's environment. Virtual methodologies to stay closer to their customers, a time where in-person interaction has just been nearly impossible. Virtual ethnographies, remote in-depth interviews, and machine learning are just 3 examples of ways to do this. And though we at AMS do expect in-person methods to return post-pandemic, much of what we've gained from virtual methods will stay, which means easier access to changing customer insights more quickly and more economically. So just a few announcements to share before we get to our Q&A with Rachel. I'm offering attendees of today's webinar an up to 2-hour complimentary consultation to discuss how we can stay close to customers even while we're remote. Whether you have questions related to market opportunity assessment, product development, pricing, customer satisfaction, we can take some time to talk and understand your next best steps and options for either building these capabilities internally, we do a bit of training, or doing some primary research. So you can look in the chat and see a link for that if you're interested in chatting more. I also want to let you guys know that we have our acclaimed Listening to the Voice of the Customer public training course coming up. So that is April 27th to 29th. It's virtual. And we're here, New Normal 2021. If you use that code, you can get $200 off your registration. And so we've shared a link for that in the chat box as well. So with that announcement, I will turn things over to Rachel to see what questions we have.
Thanks, Kristyn. I think we should have time for just a couple questions. Let's see. The first question is, do you find that respondents can easily use mobile ethnography technology?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, yes. I mean, we do like to have training sessions with respondents just to make sure everybody is clear. But in general, and this spans ages, consumers are better than ever at navigating apps on their phones. It seems like during COVID in particular, people have become even more comfortable using just technology of all types. And typically, these apps that we're talking about are very straightforward. So they're foolproof. It's basically one touch for uploading a photo, typing a quick note, or recording a video or answering a poll. So typically very easy to use, but we make sure everyone gets up to speed.
Awesome. And this one's somewhat related. It's about Zoom fatigue. Do you find that respondents are reluctant to complete digital ethnographies because they feel like they're already having so much screen time during their day, especially during the pandemic? And, people have talked a little bit about how they're feeling Zoom fatigued at home.
Yeah, I laugh because the Zoom fatigue is something I know that we often talk about at AMS too. And I think when it comes to virtual ethnography, we're not seeing as much fatigue because it's not like we're asking respondents typically to be on camera for long periods of time. People actually really like it because they're taking quick clips and they're taking photos, and so it's interactive and it's easier than, say, sitting in a meeting where you're on camera the whole time and have to be on the whole time. It's much more comfortable, relaxing, and natural to use these apps.
Great. I think we're actually right up at the end of the session, so that's all the questions we have time for. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to schedule a consultation with Kristyn, or if we weren't able to get to your question, we'll get in touch with you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Rachel, for hosting. And we'll be in touch to answer some of those last questions we couldn't get to. Bye, everyone.